for the younger generation, there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there for sure. But I think there are literally just Trump supporters and right-wingers, just as there are Trump supporters and right-wingers who think like, oh, I didn't realize mass deportation of migrants was going to look like this. There are those who literally are not even like anti-Israel from an anti-Semitic perspective, but are simply anti-Israel on the grounds that they're starving children. Trump warns Jewish donor. MAGA is starting to hate Israel. Not enough. Not hard enough. Okay. The craziest thing that I've heard was a friend's brother agreeing that it's a genocide and apartheid. For that reason, they should exist. Wait, what? A small but vocal contingent of his MAGA base, including younger Republicans and far-right podcasts, have grown skeptical of Washington's relationship with Israel. My people are starting to hate Israel. Trump recently warned a prominent Jewish donor. Yeah, no shit, dude. Anyway, there is a technical reason and a really cynical, really up reason, for the record, why many politicians, including maybe Bernard Sanders, who refuse to call it a genocide, because a genocide is illegal, and aiding and abetting a nation that is conducting a genocide is also illegal. And unless you're AOC and you somehow say Israel's doing a genocide, but we also have to defend it, most politicians don't want to say the first part, because the second part looks stupid when you say the first part. AOC literally says a genocide, but then turns around and is like, but we still have to give defensive weapons to the country doing genocide. Okay, well, you're out of your mind then. Okay, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Ridiculous. But that's what it is. That's where it comes from. As if the size of a country determines your responsibility towards international laws and human rights. Yeah. Israel, tiny nation. Okay, well, you're still doing a genocide to 2 million people right now. Okay, and an apartheid to another 2.5. And you refuse to let, like, basically the remaining 10 million Palestinians back into their ancestral homelands. That's pretty fucked up. I don't give a shit what size you are. Also, it doesn't matter what size you are. You got nukes, and America's backing you to the hilt. It's just, like I've said, dude, I think there are many things that Israel did wrong in this process. There are many things that Israel did really wrong in this process, okay? But one of the things that I identified early on was the comfort that Israeli envoys experienced for many, many decades, okay? As they were able to freely contextualize why all of this bloodshed was totally appropriate. And if you actually criticized it, you were anti-Semitic, and that would just shut off all kinds of responses instantly, right? Now that that no longer exists, they thought they could still get away with that bullshit. And because of that, when they couldn't get away with it, they got incredibly arrogant. I'm sorry, but if you're that arrogant, obviously Americans who don't give a shit are going to turn around and go, oh, I don't know about this. This is, what do you mean? You've gotten billions of dollars in weapons, big dog. What is happening here? Let's dial it back a little bit.
Like, yeah.
Rogan has gone full woke. And
then they're kicking students out that like write articles they don't like.
Yeah, that's nuts.
I mean, I talked about this before when he first covered this.
Isn't a university supposed to be a place where someone's allowed to express themselves and have
non-violently?
Yeah.
This is the average American's perspective, though. Even the average American who doesn't necessarily give a shit about like what Israel is doing all that much sees like the death and destruction, thinks, this is not great. But then more consequentially, more significantly, Americans hate censorship and cancel culture. And then all of a sudden, the position of defending Israel revolves around an endless amount of cancel culture and an endless amount of violations of the First Amendment, like actual real violations of the First Amendment, not simply saying, oh, you made me feel bad and now I'm going to yell at you, but actually prosecution from the government. Americans see that and they go, okay, well, this is extra ridiculous.
So they're writing something down and they're not calling for violence either. And they're getting challenged. And that's supposed to be how it happens. You get challenged, smarter people have better arguments, or your argument stands.
Right, discourse.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a place for discourse.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you're deporting people because you don't like who they're criticizing? Like, that gets kind of shifty.
Yeah. Podcasters, especially, are not beholden to the administration to the same degree as like a Charlie Kirk is. Okay. And for that reason, they will basically pull out. They're like rats. They will pull out when they see things that they think are unconscionable. The free world has a moral responsibility to Palestinians in distress. Flood Gaza with food, says Richie Torres. Wow. He got woke, dude. They cheer for genocide and starve our people, but once the damage is done and the impact is irreversible, they divorce themselves from the depravity and act like they had the moral position all along. That's crazy, because that's crazy to me, because I feel like Richie Torres was, I'm blocked by him, by the way. I feel like he's been the #1 attack dog for Israel in Congress. What's going on, dude? What an attitude shift here. What a attitude. What changed, Richie? Bitchy Torres? Oh, you got scared you're going to get primaried? Is that what happened? And you still, I hope you do. But yeah, this is why, by the way, this is part of the reason why I said it's not just about AIPAC dollars, okay? It's not just about the money that these politicians get from AIPAC or other Israel advocacy groups, okay? Do you understand? It's also, more importantly, a direct consequence of America's foreign policy needs and how much they can support that without increasing public scrutiny. That's why public pressure matters. Because when it becomes unavoidable, public pressure becomes unavoidable on this issue, and you are known for being the champion of this issue, the champion of starving children in Gaza, okay? All of a sudden, you're out there alone, and no amount of AIPAC dollars will save you. Richie and many others are there, okay? They are recognizing the attitude shift. They're recognizing how much the public is grossed out by Israel and Israel's actions, and defending Israel can put you underwater, especially in the Democratic Party. Okay? That's it. That's where we're at. So if they want to, actually, like I said, since they have sidestepped every bridge and every exit ramp, every opportunity that they had to say the right thing, to change their trajectory, to change their attitude on this issue, okay? Right now, if you're coming out and being like, oh no, how could this have happened? Oh no, all this shit. If you're saying that right now, that's not enough. You have to literally go out on a limb and be a radical politician. You have to go out on a limb and say, this is a genocide, this is unacceptable, okay? To make up for lost time. You have to start outflanking centrist Democrats, okay?
Images out of Gaza have shocked the world. You got starving children, desperate crowds of people seeking food, and the unbelievable gaslighting by Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, who demands that we believe him and not our lying eyes. Here's an example.
Israel is presented as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
So this conflict, this issue, it comes with a lot of history. It's very emotional. It's politically fraught here in the United States in particular. And there are, as are so many of these seemingly intractable political problems here in the United States. So what we are trying to do here at Pod Save America is create a new space on this channel for debate and conversation that brings together everybody from the left, the never Trump right, all the pod bros, all the neolib shills, all the abundance pill dorks, everybody in between, to have a conversation that tries to help us figure out some answers to these problems.
What? Unlikely to happen. Would you consider sitting down and talking to Cory about what made him change his mind? Cory? Cory Booker? Who said his mind has changed? Cory Booker 2 weeks ago was ass grabbing with Benjamin Netanyahu. His mind has not changed. What, are you kidding me? What's Cory Booker? I think you meant Richie Torres. Senator Sanders' resolution to block offensive arms sales in response to civilian casualties in Gaza and the ongoing humanitarian crisis there fails in the Senate 2770, but notably 12 Dems voted yes that didn't support a similar resolution in April, a notable shift. It's up to 27. The depravity is clear, okay? The Democrats are depraved. The Republicans are already evil monsters. We already know that. But the fact that the Dems have only gone up to 27 at this point is crazy. Here's what Cory Booker did. 17 Democrats voted no, effectively a yes vote for more bombs on Palestine. Bennett, Blumenthal, Booker, there it is, Cantwell, Coons, Cortez Masto, Fetterman, Gillibrand, Maggie Hassan, Hickenlooper, Padilla, of course, Peters, Rosen, Schiff, Schumer, Warner, and Wyden. 3 convenient absences were Gallego, and Mark Kelly and Elisa Slotkin. Yeah. Slotkin missed this vote because she was too busy going on the Colbert Report. California is so cooked. Yeah. It appears Slotkin skipped 2 votes to block arms sales to Israel tonight to go on Colbert. Good stuff. Incredible. Remember how she was talking to Crystal Ball about this? Where it's like, oh, this is something I will consider. It turns out she was considering escaping. That's what she was considering. We'll talk about the Colbert Report stuff in a second, okay? You're right, though, on the legality of labeling a genocide, but then sending aid, it would stop them. Exactly. That's why. And not just not just offensive weapons. It would be illegal. It should be illegal. It is illegal to send Israel any aid right now under our pre-existing laws. This is why we kept repeating the Leahy law over and over again when Biden was the president. It's ridiculous. Anyway, here's Trump literally defending Israel again because Canada is posturing towards state recognition for Palestine.
Trump suggesting he won't make a trade deal with Canada. Trump posting on Truth Social, quote, Canada just announced that it is backing statehood for Palestine that will make it very hard for the U.S. to make a trade deal with them. Canada faces a 35% levy on imported.
Where do I direct my anger? Like they bombed every building, every hospital, every single refugee camp. Death did nothing. Why is food the issue? I have repeated this over and over again. Denial of aid is irredeemable in the eyes of legal authorities. It is the most overt version of ethnic cleansing. Okay? Under legal circumstances, you can actually engage in this horrifying calculation of collateral damage. This person was a priority target. Maybe he wasn't supposed to be a priority target, but we assessed it and we thought he was a priority target and we killed 50, 60 people alongside him. That can be defended. Not to say it's defensible. It's still immoral and ridiculous, but that is still something you can technically defend under international humanitarian law. Okay? There is a level of plausible deniability. There is no level of plausible deniability for refusal to render aid to a civilian population that you are bombing. If they simply killed everyone in Gaza by bombing them while simultaneously allowing aid to go in to the Gaza Strip, there would be less anger. I'm telling you right now, there is no defense for refusing to allow aid into an area that you're bombing. There's no legal defense for not having any safe zones, for example, like areas that you do not bomb. You can't defend that. It is indefensible. You will never find an NGO or any sort of legal institution that will try to defend it. That's why Israel denies that it's happening. Okay? Israel doesn't deny that they're blowing up houses and shit. They do it in broad daylight, but they deny that they're refusing aid into the Strip. The reason why they have to deny it is because it is completely illegal. It's like the one thing that is a non-starter for every NGO, for every international human rights lawyer, for every single advocacy group. It is for every single organ of justice on the international scale. It does not matter. You will never be able to defend it. It is indefensible.
Goods if it does not strike a deal by tomorrow's deadline.
Canada has joined the growing list of nations.
It is the red line. And of course, the images of the depraved starvation campaign of Israel is obviously going to make people very angry. I just don't get it. Why don't Dems oppose genocide completely, at least for political gain? Why do they intentionally hurt themselves? Because they're old and because they're echo chambered, because they're cynical, because they understand that this is American foreign policy and it will not move an inch until it is impossible not to. Okay. I mean, dude, they threw the election away because of their refusal to acknowledge that Israel was committed to this genocidal campaign. It's because it's a formative part of American foreign policy in the region. That's it.
Changing their stance on the Middle East conflict after recent pictures seem to support evidence of mass starvation. Canada now says it plans to recognize Palestinian statehood. The UK and France have made similar announcements, which could affect a future peace process. Canada's Mideast policy is now at odds with President Trump, who said their announcement could impact the chances of reaching a trade deal with the U.S. Human rights groups are using strong new language about what's happening in Gaza. Deborah Patta has the latest and a warning. The images are disturbing.
By the way, the very fact that many smart people still refuse to call it a genocide, even though it clearly is one, is because of the additional complications that come along with that designation, that legal designation. And that's precisely why you should keep pushing people to say it, including Bernie Sanders. Okay? That's it. Because the moment that people recognize the reality that it is a genocide, okay, is the moment where all cards are off the table. You can't deny, you can't give aid to Israel, you can't defend Israel. There's no more defending genocide. You're a genocide defender at that point. And up until that moment of recognition, you are a genocide denier. That is precisely the reason why still so many liberal Zionists, from Bernie Sanders to the J Street guy that Mehdi Hasan debated, they just refuse to recognize it. They just refuse to say it's a genocide. But just like they refuse to recognize the war crimes or the ethnic displacement or the plight of the Palestinians up until 22 months in, they will inevitably recognize that as well. So I don't understand how these guys don't even think about their own personal futures, where they just kind of throw that out. They just don't realize how this looks. You look like a fool right now when you say, oh, I've come to the conclusion that everyone has been on for the past year and a half. Okay, great. But now you're still trying to be a setback. Now you are still trying to present yourself as a hurdle for further initiatives to be taken to stop this bloodshed. You look like an idiot right now. You're going to look even more like an idiot and an immoral monster down the line. You already are, but people will come to that recognition.
The level of human suffering in Gaza is intolerable.
In another major blow to Israel, Canada announcing it'll recognize a Palestinian state, citing the crisis on the ground.
By the way, the other part of the reason why people can't say genocide is because if you say it's genocide, then what Ansar Allah is doing is valid and just. The Houthis in Yemen, okay? What Hezbollah is doing is valid and just in Lebanon. They're not doing anything anymore because they're done, but all of a sudden, because it is, by the way, it is, literally, and all of a sudden, what we did to stop the Houthis from trying to stop Israel's genocide, all of a sudden we're the bad guys. You understand? We are too closely associated as a belligerent in this conflict. That's the problem. I have no idea what movement means here. Dems in Congress are welcome to sign on to bills to stop the transfer of offensive weapons to Israel, but orgs attempting to rebrand need some type of accountability. J Street aggressively lobbied against the ceasefire for months. They did, which was crazy. Shouldn't they at least have to explain why they did so? Why they threatened members of Congress who supported a ceasefire in October, November, and December of 2023? There's two things being conflated here. Political coalition building around the specific demands and reputation laundering. Again, the issue around genocide is not a linguistic litmus test. It's that the label confers urgent legal and moral obligations. It has meaning. It is not a purity test or whatever. If one can't meet the baseline agreement, then there's deep disagreement as to what is going on. Read the statements coming from liberals who are supposedly joining in on the movement, in air quotes. Many of them, though not all, still have a demand Hamas disarm and surrender. This is not a change of position. It's simply rebranding support of genocide. I am all for strategic compromise, but there's an obvious risk by watering down demands to offensive carve-outs in bills everyone knows will never pass. We are not building meaningful opposition, but instead engaging in reputation laundering as a get-out-the-vote strategy for the midterms. Yeah. And Democrats who literally cast aside their electoral chances because they were tied to the hip to Israel are going to do it again here. They're going to be like, oh, dude, you're being You're being silly. You're being ridiculous. Not sure why you're being so obtuse about this. A senator can vote against weapons shipments without saying genocide. You could attend a protest without saying it. Political movements win through addition, not by demanding everyone say the exact same thing. This is beyond fatuous. No one is demanding senators not vote against Israel if they don't use the word genocide. It isn't clear what this alleged gatekeeping would even look like. What I'm saying is failure to meet this baseline, this very baseline demand indicates PR, not substantive opposition. You're spiking the football over an ultimately meaningless vote. People are still being shot by the dozens every day, and the genocide is unabated. Many Dems, though not all, are very obviously using this opportunity to launder their own complicity. That is not progress. That's exactly what's going on. And no, Tommy doesn't suck. No, stop. I'm not saying this because like I talk to them from time to time. It's not the reason. The reason why, like Tommy Vitor himself, okay, is I think amongst powerful people within the Democratic Party, Tommy Vitor has a lot more influence, commands a lot more influence than someone like myself does. Okay? I think Tommy Vitor is on board. So is Ben Rhodes. Like people that have played a formative role in Obama's foreign policy. Ben Rhodes, right? He's also one of the pod Johns, one of the pod bros. They're on board. They see it. They recognize it. Okay? They recognize it, regardless of their past actions under the Obama administration. You're joking, right? No, I think they recognize what is going on. They literally sound like me a year ago. Okay? That's important to acknowledge. That's important to recognize. Okay? But having said that, they should push even further. They should push even further. And not only should they push even further, they should be on board with applying pressure to Democrats who are simply cynically using this as a way to be like, we know it's not going to pass, but this is a great opportunity for us to make it seem like we're on the right side of a popular issue without any sort of real interest, in changing the outcome for the Palestinians. That's why I always say, I don't care what someone's like background is or what they've said up until this point, as long as what they're saying from this point on is unconditional support to the Palestinians and an immediate end to this genocide, then it's fine. We can talk about where you were and what it took for you to get here after. Okay? So my criticism of people right now revolves around the many who refuse to take that leap, who just do this still wishy-washy bullshit, who still present themselves as a hurdle against the emancipatory needs of the Palestinians while recognizing that there is a death and destruction campaign, a genocide. You're saying he doesn't suck because he has more influence than you? No. No. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm saying Tommy Vitor doesn't suck because he recognizes what's going on. He is, and he does speak out against it. And I'm saying it's important for someone with that much influence, a lot more influence within powerful circles than myself, to actually be consistently communicating this. Because let's be real. No Democratic senator is ever going to hear me. Okay? They're never going to hear me, even when I'm talking to them directly. It's in through one ear, out through the other. They see me simply as a pathway to reach out to these like rudderless young men, and that's it. Okay? But they do listen to Tommy Vitor and the Pod Johns in general. But again, I agree with Adam Johnson, as I say quite frequently, that it's not simply a choice word. It's not like, this is not a semantics argument. Genocide is a legal designation. It is a legal designation, and they know it's a legal designation that comes with additional complications for people who do want to still continue supporting Israel. Kaya, place. What is Bernie's argument that it isn't a genocide? How does he justify this? He already said it yesterday. He said, oh, it's a legal term. I don't do legal back and forths or whatever. We leave that up to the experts. It's like, no, you don't. You don't leave murder up to the experts. That's a legal term too. You know? There is no problem with saying that an invasion is illegal when it's a foreign adversary. We don't say, oh, let's leave it up to the experts. He keeps saying you can call it whatever you want, but the people are asking, why aren't you calling it genocide. And it's just a way for him to, I think, like, to move away from that conversation. Anyway, also, it is kind of silly to say, let's leave it up to the experts on calling it a genocide. Experts are calling it a genocide. The fuck?
Canada has long been committed to a two-state solution. An independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security.
Israel condemning the move as rewarding Hamas terrorism. But the world's reacting to images like this. Gaza in the grips of near famine, according to UN experts. And efforts to deliver more food by air and land proving difficult, chaotic, and often deadly.
What is this? Carney has signaled and private support will be unconditional. He is moving the sails on a boat at the podium. These kinds of leaders need our support and motivation. Use your base and the pod bros, etc. to help them gain speed. What? Exactly, which is why Carney is working behind the scenes to entrap Israel. If there's a leader right now who can, it's Carney. We have to encourage him to keep grinding on this. Let's support whomever is taking real actions, especially the people who congregate meaningful political power. You matter a lot here. I don't know about that, dude.
Israel rejecting accusations its troops opened fire, saying they only fired warning volleys. Meanwhile, the hunger crisis only growing worse. At least 150 dying from malnutrition, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. More than half of these children. The US Special Envoy in Israel today, an American volunteer doctor in Gaza, urging him to come and see for himself what's happening on the ground.
Mr. Witkoff, just come here right now.
Well, what we're seeing now, what we understand is that Steve Witkoff is going to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to discuss a ceasefire, the return of hostages alive and dead, and also how to alleviate the suffering in Gaza.
Good evening. President Trump's special envoy has met Benjamin Netanyahu as international pressure grows on the Israeli leader to end the war in Gaza. In scenes that have become all too familiar, officials in Gaza say at least 91 people were killed while trying to get aid in the past day. Not only is Steve Witkoff trying to salvage ceasefire talks.
Wait. Hold on. The one phone call tweet has invoked some negative reactions. Avi Bitterman says, the I'm Not Dying for Israel crew would ultimately, if push came to shove, be quite happy to send Americans to die for Israel. By for Israel, this is obviously a cheeky way of saying for the purpose of invading, killing, destroying Israel or something along those lines. The point is that I'm Not Dying for Israel sentiments are meant to be an anti-war Israel signal, when in reality it's not really anti-war as much as it's anti about who's on the other side. Yeah, it's about anti-genocide, dude. Yeah, that's the point. Also, it never has to get to that point. That's the reason why I said, this is why all it takes is one phone call. These people are so stupid. It will never get to that point, okay? Unless, you know, this guy's a doctor? Really? What the doctor of genocide? No one got your point? No, they're being deliberately obtuse because it's indefensible. It is indefensible. That's the reason why they are trying to be deliberately obtuse, okay? It is apparently an article of faith in some circles that Biden could have stopped the Israeli invasion of Gaza at any point with one phone call. Seems false. When pressed on this, it turns out the proposed one phone call is a threat of American ground invasion of Israel. Once again, this is reductive, but it's really interesting. Not only is this reductive, but it's pretty basic stuff. I'm not saying it's just one phone call. I'm saying as to why it's about that one phone call, okay? Because we're supplying them. Without our weapons, 70% of all munitions Israel has used, both offensively and defensively, have come from the United States of America. It's done. It's over. These are not internet dweebs, chatter. These are not internet dweebs. These are like Hosberists themselves, like the Avi Bitterman account is a Hosberist. This person is a Vox author. What are you talking about? Like, this person writes for Vox, okay? They're a relatively known, it's not their 45K reach. Shut up. What are you talking about? This is a person who literally writes for a reputable liberal institution. Okay? That's not just like a random dickhead on Twitter. We can stop the Israeli invasion of Gaza by ourselves. Invading a nuclear power is, I guess, in some sense, a true claim about the world, but I do not think it's usefully simplified to with one phone call. Israel should not be in Gaza. Netanyahu has no plan. He does not care about the lives of anyone there and is not achieving any conceivable legitimate war goal. I want to start talking to these people directly. Okay? We should cancel aid. I don't think though I don't think that will actually change Israel's behavior substantially. Well, you're admitting it then. But because this situation has an enormous number of lives at stake and is very important, it's a good idea to be serious about what actions we can take. And it's incredibly frustrating to have interactions with people who take it as an article of faith that it'd be easy. It is. It is easy. No, Biden could not have ended this with one phone call. It's not 1982. I like that she also, because she's a Vox author, she knows the history. Okay, it's not 1982. Is it not 2021 either? Yeah, an arms embargo and sanctions would probably do the trick. Oh, no shit. Oh, so you do agree with me. Oh, I got it. Oh, no. Oh, my God. It turns out you do agree with me when someone else says it. Yeah, no shit. Also, invading a country, a nuclear country, militarily is very different when we're talking about Israel versus Russia. Russia is a foreign adversary. No one actually wants to invade Israel militarily. It would never get to that point because Israel is an extension of America's imperial project. Israel does not exist without America. Holy this admission here basically means, oh, you're right. I just don't want to agree with you. That's it. That's what for so many centrist liberals who want to defend Israel, it's literally about not giving an earnest, yeah, you were right all along and I was wrong all along. They have to literally try to desperately find something in their pathetic, egomaniacal, self-centered worldview where they just have to basically turn around and say, yeah, I think this person, you made a good point, which I personally said was a bad point earlier. Yeah, it's basically this. While you may have been correct all along about Israel's commitment to exterminating the population of Gaza, you were also someone I disliked due to petty political sectarianism. So in essence, it was your fault that I had to oppose you. It's literally, you were right all along, but you were rude about it. I didn't have to be rude about it. You were just in opposition to the right position at a time when I would have needed your support. At a time when we all would have needed all of your support. Biden probably could have used those other sanctions to pressure Israel. Oh yeah, Biden can and should have done wildly more. We have a lot of leverage, and we're not even close to deploying it effectively. One phone call is a childish and false view of how that leverage works, but it does exist. The phone call is that. The do you think it means when I say one phone call? Do you think Biden or Donald Trump in that phone call is going to be like, hey, Bibi, I love you. How's the weather? That's not what they're going to say. They're going to say, stop it. You know what that means if you don't. She literally agrees with me 100%. These are supposed intelligent writers for liberal institutions. No wonder they lost the election. No wonder they're losing public support. Yes. It's so dumb. They literally do not have a choice. The following month, retired Israeli Major General Yitzhak Brik went even further than Galant. All our missiles, the ammunition, the precision-guided bombs, all the airplanes and bombs, it's all from the U.S., Brik said in an interview in November. The minute they turn off the tap, we can't keep fighting. You have no capability. Everyone understands that we can't fight this war without the United States, period. And if they're such an insane rogue state that we cannot tell them to stop doing things we don't want them to do on our dime, the solution doesn't seem like it's giving them tens of billions of dollars in additional funding as Biden did in real time. I'm going to actually save this. Am I wrong to think that if they choose to, by the way, you know what the other cynical side of this is that's really stupid that these people don't realize because they're too dumb to see anything beneath. They're too dumb to see anything outside of their horse blinders. My argument is the one that is against anti-Semitic fascists. Okay. Because if you develop a worldview, and many liberals have done this, right? Where they've developed this worldview where like, we just simply can't stop Israel and we just simply have to keep giving them unlimited money. What do you think is the reason? Because if it's not America, which has all the power here and refusing to stop it, then what is the reason? Is it Jewish mind control, perhaps? Is it the power of hypnosis? Is that the reason? Because that's what many people think now. Because you have designed a narrative that makes no logical sense. What do you think is the reason then? I know what the reason is. I say the truth. It's because America likes what Israel is doing. But liberals who also personally are beholden to Western chauvinistic framework, who also want to defend Israel and also defend the Democratic Party or the American institutions, literally cannot openly say America wants this to continue and that's why it's continuing. They have to say, no, Israel is a sovereign state. Israel is a totally separate sovereign state. They could do all of this stuff without us. They can't. Israel knows they can't do it. That's why it takes one phone call. That's it. Because if it doesn't take one phone call, and if it's not America actually allowing Israel to do all this shit, then what's the reason? What is the reason? What is the reason? You have no answer for this. Liberalism does not have an answer for this. Liberal Zionism does not have an answer for this. And that's why if you leave that puzzle with a piece missing, people plug their own puzzle piece on there, and that puzzle piece always is Jewish mind control. That's it. That's what a lot of people are arriving at the conclusion on. It's a dangerous one because it's untrue and also bigoted. People are opening the floodgates of fascism in this country, anti-Semitic fascism in this country, and so many liberals are basically championing it without realizing what this spells for their future prospects. It's additionally, if you're also a Jewish Zionist in this country, there is functionally no difference between what Nick Fuentes says and what liberal Zionists say. The only difference is liberal Zionists like what Israel is doing, and Nick Fuentes claims he hates it because they're Jews, okay? That's it. That's it. They're saying the same shit. Their defense is the same, or in Nick Fuentes' case, his offense is the same. And the more they cast aside people that do not abide by this framework, that like Israel is this false framework, okay? I can't say Nick is in the wrong here, Cap. No, of course he's in the wrong, dumbass. What are you talking about? Of course he's in the wrong. He's saying the same shit that liberals are saying. The only difference is he's ostensibly against it, okay? He is ostensibly against it. But the fundamentals are the same, that we just have some unspoken loyalty to Israel. That's what he's saying. And that Israel is doing this for all Jews. His different fundamental, his major difference, of course, between like Nick Fuentes and Jake Tapper is that Jake Tapper says Israel's doing this for Jews and it's a good thing. Nick Fuentes says Israel's doing this for Jews and it's a bad thing because Jews are bad. That's the only difference. But they're saying the same shit. That's why so many people cope and say, oh, it must be. That's why so many people cope and say it must be blackmail because they can't recognize that America likes what Israel is doing. America allows Israel to keep doing what it's doing. So it must be that our big, beautiful politicians that otherwise would be based in anti-Semitism pilled must be getting blackmailed by the Jewish Mossad. That's it. That's the whole point. And it doesn't mean that like Mossad or the CIA doesn't engage in blackmail. Of course they do. But the real reason is not AIPAC. The real reason isn't blackmail. The real reason is because this is American foreign policy. Okay? This is a part of American foreign policy. They do not care that Israel is killing Palestinians. They do not care to give unlimited trillions of dollars to Israel to kill as many Palestinians as possible. They don't care. They want it. It has nothing to do with Judaism and everything to do with American imperialism. That's why it's uniparty. There has to be a reason why they dick ride Israel so hard, though, no? Interpretation. Simply ahistoric. With one phone call. Without our unlimited behave in the belligerent ways it does. They realize this too. This kind of deflection, room for insane, creates room for insane Jewish blackmail conspiracies. This is silly and simply ahistoric. All right. And then I'm going to add this. I'm predicting you'll be enjoying your food in 15 minutes. No, you're wrong. I'm responding to that person. I'm going to say, this is silly and simply ahistoric. Biden stopped Israel in 2021 with one phone call without our unlimited support. Without our unlimited support, Israel cannot behave in the belligerent ways it does. They realize this too. This kind of cynical deflection creates room for insane Jewish blackmail conspiracies. Hasanabi reply guys right now. Yeah, no, they are in this completely untenable position where they're literally saying what Israel's doing is wrong, but we're just like powerless to stop it. Regardless of whatever part of the political spectrum that they're on, it's always, but Hamas, from liberals all the way down to some of the most far-right reactionaries. Everybody always goes, but Hamas, what can you do? Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Do you guys actually hate Trump then? Like, I don't understand. I guess it's more honest to say you love Trump. You love what Trump is doing in Israel and Gaza. You know? Are you familiar with Boston Consulting Group and their role in designing the GHF sites? Yes, I am. They've also tried to walk back their involvement. A lot of people very quickly tried to walk back their involvement with the Gaza Holocaust Foundation aid scheme that they had designed. So you gave people to Gaza literally $60 million. Come on, how do people believe this? No, he's lying. It's $60 million that they funded with the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has been this aid delivery scheme that they created to at least have some kind of plausible deniability that like Israel was not denying aid, but because they are so bloodthirsty, they just kept killing people every single day. To this day, Israeli soldiers alongside American mercenaries are shooting at Palestinian children that are trying to desperately get aid. There is literally a Green Beret that came back, Tony Aguilar, that came back, who believed all of the nonsense about like Hamas is evil and blah, 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 who went out there, who served alongside the IDF as a mercenary and was shocked. Like a Green Beret that is a mercenary was shocked at how depraved Israel's actions are. He's pro-Israel. He was pro-Israel. Like, think about that. Why isn't that the headlines? I wonder why. I wonder why the only places that he's gotten interviewed is like Democracy Now! Or Senator Chris Van Hollen or people like that. I mean, he has gotten some interviews in mainstream media, but it's shocking levels of depravity that you only read about in history books. Here's the Tucker interview today. Okay, we'll look at that later. Yeah, also, it's not even 60 million. It's 30 million. I've been saying this as well. Shouts out to Humeira for correcting this. Trump said on Monday that the U.S. has dispensed $60 million for Gaza humanitarian aid. The State Department, however, has not announced any funds beyond the $30 million. U.S. officials believe Trump was likely conflating the U.S. and Israeli funds. Yes. Most likely it was a half and half initiative because it's Israel and America both funding it. And Trump is such a baboon that he just said, oh, it's 60 million. We're giving 60 million because he's conflating what is most likely the Israeli figure as well. I already covered the Chris Van Hollen clip yesterday. Chatters, you don't have to spam that link. Anyway, getting back to people being like, people talking back and forth amongst themselves about like who's supporting what and who's not going hard enough on their support for Palestinians. There's obviously a conversation that took place between Mehdi Hassan and Jeremy Ben Ami, who is the president of J Street. Democrats about how Democrats should evolve on U.S. policy towards Israel, condition or cut off weapons, even Iron Dome. Should Dems use the term genocide if it turns off allies? We'll get to that in a second. As Steve Witkoff arrives in Israel again.
He'll also want to tackle the deepening humanitarian crisis. And an American doctor working in Gaza has urged Mr.
What is this? All you have to say is classic redirect. The terrorists are the ones taking the money and the food and killing off the Palestinians. Yeah, exactly. They are. The terrorist state of Israel and the ISIS affiliates that the terrorist state of Israel has armed to the fucking teeth, the Popular Forces, as they call themselves, led by illiterate ISIS affiliate, drug trafficker, Yasser Abu Shabab. Those are the guys who actually loot the aid before it gets to the point of delivery. That's when Israel even allows the aid to get to the point of delivery. But I don't know if that's what you're talking about. But that is what's the reality, okay? That is what's going on, actually. But don't worry. 6 months later, you'll arrive at that conclusion, too, when you go, oh, how could this have happened? Oh, I am, lol. I'm being sarcastic. Okay.
Mr. Witkoff to come and see the situation for himself. And a warning, this report from Sky's Sally Lockwood contains images of those injured in the violence and also malnourished children.
These are scenes it's hoped Trump's envoy reports back to Washington. A hospital in Nusrat.
No, Yasser Abu Shabab is not a New York Crimes article writer. He's a Wall Street Journal article writer. He's an article head. Even though he's illiterate, literally dropped out of 2nd grade. Why are you so triggered today? Tooth pain still? No, man, I'm triggered by stupidity. Like, dude, you want to know why I'm still so mad? One, because of what's in front of me, okay? What I've covered for the past 22 months, every single day. That's number one. Number two, even as people come to the recognition that we have been at, okay? Even though people are coming to that recognition slowly, far too slow, their expectation is like that we take them seriously when they turn around and say, oh, well, it's your fault that it took me this long to realize that Palestinians are human beings and they're being starved to death. It's insane. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I welcome you with open arms. I'm so sorry that I made you feel weird. I made you feel weird when you kept defending Israel. I'm so sorry that you had to do genocide denial because your feelings were hurt or because you were scared about the language that I was using. Oh, no, you were a Holocaust denier? Oh, man. How is this any different than people being like, I got bullied into being a Nazi? The woke side got too woke, and then I became a Hitler-heiling Nazi. Okay, you.
In central Gaza, receiving casualties, reportedly killed and injured, trying to get food from an aid site run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This father crying over the body of his eldest son. He had a master's degree in political science and international relations, he says, and he died looking like a corpse, crawling to find flour. And this is a story we are seeing every day. People dying trying to get food. People dying because they haven't had any for too long.
I only went to this aid point because my children were starting to look for food on the ground in the street. I've lost 25 kilos. Until now, there's nothing. I have to collect whatever grains and chickpeas I find thrown on the ground. I grind them and eat them.
We're receiving reports like this every day of people dying at aid sites in Gaza. Aid sites backed by America and Israel. Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff is back in Israel for the first time in 3 months, meeting Benjamin Netanyahu, and Israeli media is reporting he may pay a visit to an aid site in Gaza while he's here. It's little coincidence Steve Witkoff is here now. A small but vocal contingent of Donald Trump's base is growing increasingly angry over Gaza. It's felt America, Israel's closest ally, is the only country with the power to pressure Netanyahu to change course. And in an unprecedented move, Arab nations are calling on Hamas to lay down their weapons and surrender control of Gaza.
This is why it's annoying when the Arab League comes out and is like, the Arab League comes out and as the cowardly allies of Israel and America that they are, and go, hey, after an unprecedented amount of violence, after this live stream Holocaust that has unfolded against all Palestinians, the death toll probably in the hundreds of thousands at this point, we still don't know. What you should do is surrender your arms and make it easier for Israel to kill you, kill the rest of you. Like, what are we talking about? It's ridiculous. It's also ridiculous when this conversation takes place for Ukraine. And I'm consistent on this position. One of Russia's major points that they've pushed for with Donald Trump was Ukraine to demilitarize. That is completely unacceptable. That is completely ridiculous. And I said it as such. People think, oh, Hasan, you're so pro-Russia, you're so pro-Russia. What the do you mean I'm pro-Russia? It's ridiculous. It is insane. You have no sovereignty without arms. So now you got the Arab League saying this. And people don't understand that the Arab League plays this formative role here. It plays the role of America's interest. They are expressing America's desires and Israel's desires here. But of course, people who are not super tuned in to what is going on, that are trying to contend with what's happening here, will go, oh, well, they're Arabs too. Yeah. Moen Rabbani wrote on this. Now that France and Britain, both members of the United Nations Security Council and G7, have indicated they are prepared to recognize the state of Palestine, the dam has burst. Today, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney indicated his government too intends to recognize Palestine during the upcoming session of the UN General Assembly in New York, and a growing number of Western states are adopting or preparing similar positions. It is far from certain whether any of these governments will actually follow through on their statements of intent, and by attaching various conditions to their plans, they've already provided themselves with an escape clause, should they find it necessary to use it. Given that a two-state settlement has been the official position of every one of these governments for several decades, and that a majority of states have already recognized Palestine years, if not decades ago, the question arises as to why Western states have waited so long to recognize the state, without which their proclaimed strategic objective is an impossibility. One reason relates to their domestic politics and the profound transformation of Western public opinion. Brian Tyler Cohen calls the left anti-Semitic. What? I mean, there are a lot of liberal content creators who have cozied up to the likes of a sex pest like Destiny and have been noticeably absent from the conversation when it comes to Israel. Okay? They've been noticeably absent from that conversation. Who cares? One reason is because, like I've also said, the sea change in Western public opinion. The shift has been building over many years, and this is the harvest of a continued, persistent efforts by countless individuals and organizations to bring about changes in official policy. In large parts, thanks to their campaigns, the impact of the Gaza genocide on their public opinion manifested itself much more rapidly and much more broadly than would otherwise have been the case. It is safe to conclude that this change is now irreversible, similar to that experienced by South Africa after the 1960 Sharpeville massacre. In response, governments, this is his Substack, by the way, that he is just like putting out piece by piece. In response, governments have felt compelled to act. Most have chosen the symbolic and comparatively cost-free approach of recognition. They have done so in large part to avoid adopting concrete measures like an arms embargo, trade sanctions, or diplomatic isolation. But in doing so, they've also demonstrated that the pressures generated by protracted public campaigns can and do produce results, and can indeed force governments to change course. And that is precisely why I say this is good, because it expands on the permission. Okay? It shows people, it gives people confidence that their voices do matter a little bit. And when you give people a little bit of confidence, they're going to continue putting pressure. No one that was pro-Palestine, whether before October 7 or after October 7, was going to turn around and go, all right, I guess it's time to get back to brunch. Palestine has never been a brunch liberal issue. As a matter of fact, there are a couple things that I point to in advocacy, in American politics, in the Western world, where someone takes a position that most people refuse to take. Criminal justice reform is one of those issues. When I see someone that is actively advocating to reduce sentences for criminals, to make sure that they have a more humane treatment in prison, I immediately know you're taking on an issue that no one is going to be on board with. Palestine is the other one. Trans issues, to a certain degree, is also in this category, where there are still, that gets a little bit convoluted, though, because there are liberals who fake behave like allies and will focus on the optics alone. But like, those are some of the few issues. Homelessness too, yes. Like, some of the most over people in American society. When I see someone who actually cares about these people, I know that they are taking on a role that most people would not take on. These are some of the most voiceless people, okay, in perpetuity. So This is precisely the reason why the pro-Palestinian crowd is not going to somehow magically stop. They're not the brunch crowd. They're not going to go, okay, well, we got our wishes. There is state recognition for Palestine. No, people are still getting killed. Children are still being starved. There's no way that these guys are going to stop. As a matter of fact, you're giving them confidence to continue. And you should. You should never stop the pressure until Palestine is free. The continuation and intensification of these campaigns is therefore now more justified and necessary than ever. They will now even be more focused on compelling these governments to take active measures to end their complicity in Israel's crimes, to bring these crimes to an end. Just like I said, in 2021, it was a turning point in my experience over the past 12 years that I've been a, open advocate for Palestinian emancipation as a professional media personality. I saw an attitude shift in 2021. It wasn't just because of Israeli depravity in one of their many sieges. It was also because NGOs in unison, including B'Tselem, openly recognized Israel as an apartheid regime. This was a major turning point because this opened up the floodgates. This expanded the permission structure of what you could say without immediately being shut down. Slowly but surely, people tirelessly kept working. Many Palestinians that live in diaspora, many Palestinians that communicate the desires of their immediate family members that are still living in Gaza or the West Bank, they turned around and kept up their advocacy. And slowly but surely, that momentum built. That momentum kept building. Eventually, after October 7, a lot of people tuned into what was going on in Israel. They were shocked. They were horrified by the atrocities that they saw. Okay? But then Israel very quickly dropped all pretext that this was like a justifiable war. And in that process, over the course of the past 22 months, more and more people that have paid attention to the death and destruction that Israel is committed to have begun to recognize that perhaps, maybe, these guys are exterminationists and they had no reason to do any of these things. And in that process, they learned about the apartheid. In that process, they learned about Zionism. In that process, they learned about the way that Israeli society views these actions. Okay? It's that simple. It takes a long time, but as long as people continue the pressure, more and more people will come on board. That's why I don't immediately cast aside people who are like, I'm a latecomer to this. I'm an ally now, but I'm a latecomer to this. I still have some hangups. Because there was a point in time when there was no one. This was an incredibly lonely cause. Palestinians had no one that advocated for them, okay? No one, not even a little bit. That's why I'm always so still to this day shocked by how much support there is for the Palestinian conditions right now. It's obviously still not enough. A liberal Zionist I had once knew IRL recently shared on his social The Guardian open letter for crippling sanctions against Israel. I never imagined I'd see the day when liberal Zionists advocate for BDS. Yeah. Many people did not understand the truth. They did not understand the full extent of the history. But now they do. Toothpaste is out of the tube. Can't put it back in. Cat's out of the bag. A second reason Western governments are not acting on recognition is that Israel's words and actions have backed them into a corner and left them with no choice. For decades, Western governments have treated two-state settlement and Palestinian state not as policies requiring concrete actions in order to bring them about, but rather as political slogans under the cover of which Israel was permitted to turbocharge its efforts to annex Palestinian territory and dispossess its inhabitants with the express purpose of making a two-state settlement impossible, which is precisely what they did. 750,000 Jewish settlers now living in occupied East Jerusalem and also the West Bank. This has made it unmanageable. The two-state solution is a lie. It was just a way to keep pushing the conversation further and further away as Israel continued to displace, ethnically cleanse the land of the Palestinians in the West Bank illegally. It has been a de facto single state, an apartheid state, for quite a while. That's why I call it the so-called peace process. Western governments could deflect pressure to confront its annexationist activities on the pretext that doing so would undermine the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations and thus the consummation of a two-state settlement. The peace process had to be kept alive at all costs. In this Kafkaesque world, The two-state settlement served as a fig leaf for its elimination. As Israel shifted even further to the extreme right, that situation has become increasingly untenable. With the Gaza genocide, it has become simply impossible to sustain as Israeli leaders, all of them today, openly speak of their intention to collectively expel the Palestinians it has not killed yet from the Gaza Strip, to annex the West Bank, and to ensure a Palestinian state is never established. It is official Israeli government policy. In his official statement regarding Canada's new position, Prime Minister Mark Carney explicitly referenced Israel's actions not only in the Gaza Strip, but particularly in the West Bank as justifications. These include accelerated settlement building across the West Bank and East Jerusalem, the E1 settlement plan, and this month's vote by the Knesset calling for the annexation of the West Bank and soaring settler terrorism. That part is actually pretty important. Mark Carney has definitely, regardless of the wishy-washy, both sides bullshit, two-state advocacy that he engaged in, those direct lines of attack against what Israel is doing, naming and shaming the actual policies, was certainly different than what Keir Starmer did, which was the worst out of all of these Western leaders, and definitely better than even Macron, even though Macron had the first Q7. Kid Starver and Macron. What is happening? Jesus Christ, I'm dying. Yeah, the banker actually hit a better line overall. Like its predecessors, Canada recognized that its continued embrace of a two-state settlement and Palestinian statehood while supporting these only with empty slogans had become at best a nonsensical and politically costly. Israeli extremism left Ottawa and other Western capitals with two and only two options: recognize Palestine or endorse formal Israeli annexation. In addition to other factors, last year's International Court of Justice advisory opinion that Israeli rule in occupied territories is illegal and must end as rapidly as possible would have complicated formal recognition of Israeli annexation. A third reason for the recognition of Palestinian statehood is the failure of the alternative formulated by the first Trump administration, Arab-Israeli normalization as a substitute for the Palestinian self-determination. Rather than promote Arab-Israeli normalization as the icing on the cake of a two-state settlement, the grandiloquently entitled Abraham Accords were designed to weaken, isolate, and ultimately marginalize the Palestinians. And that's precisely what they saw. They essentially aimed to remove the question of Palestine from the regional as well as the international agenda with official Arab support. That is one of the major reasons why October 7 happened. This is something that I have brought up when I talked to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She agreed with me on this as well. I don't know where that opinion went after that, but this is precisely the case. The Abraham Accords left Palestinians isolated with no options other than to fight back. This is precisely the reason why October 7 happened. It was a major, major part of the puzzle, major part of the reason beyond the regular Israeli depravity, like the regular policies of Israel that was so devastating for overall Palestinian existence. Okay? That's why I say Trump 1 played a formative role. But the problem is Biden continued Trump 1. Biden continued the Abraham Accords. Biden could have, at some point, put an end to this. Biden could have demanded that Israel scale back, but it didn't, because Biden is just as pro-Israel as Donald Trump is. That's it.
If Trump's envoy does visit Gaza, it's unlikely he'll see here NASA Hospital, where healthy children are fainting from hunger and those with chronic conditions are wasting away from malnutrition. An American pediatrician working here had this response to the claim that there's no famine in Gaza.
This is an absolute lie. This is absolutely not true, because I've seen that with my own eyes. And I would like to have Mr. Witkoff come here and talk to me to my face, and I'll show him.
Just look at this. An aid lorry arriving in Gaza, and it's pure chaos. This is what happens when desperation takes over. It's hoped America's visit will be a moment that finally makes the difference. Sally Lockwood, Sky News, Jerusalem.
I know the topic of Israel is on everyone's mind. I have an update from Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who I got off the phone with this morning. Special Envoy Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee had a very productive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other officials today in Israel on the topic of delivering much-needed food and aid to Gaza. President Trump is a humanitarian with a big heart, and that's why he sent Special Envoy Witkoff to the region in an effort to save lives and end this crisis. Tomorrow, Special Envoy Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee will be traveling into Gaza to inspect the current distribution sites and secure a plan to deliver more food and meet with local Gazans to hear firsthand about this dire situation on the ground. The special envoy and the ambassador will brief the president immediately after their visit to approve a final plan for food and aid distribution into the region. And we will provide more details for all of you once that plan is approved and agreed on by the President of the United States. On the trade front, the president secured a historic trade agreement with the European Union that puts America first and fundamentally strengthens the economic relationship between the two largest economies in the world. This deal delivers on two of President Trump's core promises on trade, supercharging America's manufacturing capacity and opening up foreign market access to American businesses. The deal guarantees that American businesses will have unprecedented levels of access to the European Union markets to export our American-made goods.
And now over in the United States, splits have started to emerge within the Republican Party over the U.S.'s blanket support of Israel as well due to the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza, particularly among members of Donald Trump's MAGA base. For more on this story, we can bring in France 24's former Washington correspondent Ketevan Gojasani. Ketevan, great to see you. Tell us about the splits that's emerged.
Well, look, on Monday evening, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a MAGA far-right representative closely allied with Donald Trump, became the first Republican in Congress to use the word genocide to describe what...
When Bernie says he doesn't want to call it a genocide, he knows the international legal implications that come along with it. Quite simply, they will stand arm in arm institutional Dems as avoid the responsibility that comes along with it. Yes, the reason why they won't say it's a genocide is because they recognize their culpability. They recognize that it's illegal to like, it's just impossible, unless you're AOC, to maintain support for a country that you have openly said is doing a genocide. There is no, it's over after that point. It doesn't make sense.
Is happening in Gaza. If we can pull up the post she had on X, she said, it's the most truthful and easiest thing to say that October 7th in Israel was horrific and all hostages must be returned, but so is the genocide, humanitarian crisis, and starvation happening in Gaza. She was responding to a fellow Republican representative, Randy Fine, who had tweeted last week, release the hostages, until then starve away. Seemingly talking to the Palestinians. Yesterday, there was another Republican, Thomas Massie. He's more of a critic of Donald Trump, a critic of the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC, but he is a staunch Republican. He said Israel's war in Gaza is so lopsided that there's no rational argument American taxpayers should be paying for it. These are still minority voices within the Republican Party, especially when it comes to Congress, but it is representative of a shift in the base, in the voters of the Republican Party, and a shift of attitude towards Israel. And you see that especially in the broader MAGA world of the podcasters, the YouTubers, those influencers of MAGA world. Last week, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, he was on set with these two pro-Trump YouTubers, the Nelk boys, very popular with young men, with the young MAGA crowd. There was a huge and unprecedented backlash towards the Nelk boys by their own audience, who are basically accusing them of harboring a war criminal and giving him a platform. You have people like Matt Gaetz, the former MAGA representative, people like Steve Bannon, former advisor to Donald Trump, who are saying that support for Israel is becoming a political liability. And there was the conservative radio host, Megyn Kelly, who I think summed it up pretty well this week. She said, Israel has made itself the villain of the world. They have lost support among their dearest friends.
So what explains this shift that we're seeing?
Well, there are several things that could explain this shift. One, you have to already remember that the Republican Party now is a big tent. You have the traditional GOP, the Grand Old Party, the foreign policy hawks. They see the safety of Israel as a security matter, as key to stability in the Middle East, and therefore in the interest of the United States. They haven't really moved when it comes to Israel. Then you have the evangelicals. They see defending Israel as sort of a biblical duty. And while they still strongly support Israel, they are starting to feel very uncomfortable with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And even more so when you have Israel, for example, bombing the church in Gaza, or Israeli settlers in the West Bank attacking Christians in the West Bank. You had Mike Huckabee, who cannot be considered someone who's very friendly to the Palestinians, saying that these attacks on Christians in the West Bank were an act of terror. Finally, you have MAGA and the far right. For them, there's a little bit of anti-Semitism in that crowd, obviously, but also it's mostly about America first, that policy, which is basically, we don't care what happens elsewhere. Why should we be sending millions and billions to the Israelis to help them when we could be spending it at home? And finally, there's also a growing generational divide. You see that among the conservatives, but also among Democrats under the age of 40, attitudes toward Israel are shifting, and they're
I'm telling you, for the younger generation, there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there for sure. But I think there are literally just Trump supporters and right-wingers, just as there are Trump supporters and right-wingers who think like, oh, I didn't realize mass deportation of migrants was going to look like this. There are those who literally are not even like anti-Israel from an anti-Semitic perspective, but are simply anti-Israel on the grounds that they're starving children. You know what I mean? Like, even among like older Republicans at this point.
shifting very fast.
Kativan, thank you very much for that. Kativan Gojistani there.
Hasan Reactions, one of the best ones in the React channel.